Hello, everyone. For those of you that were just in the keynote, welcome to the first breakout session of NextGen. And today we're talking about 5 generations in the workplace, what you need to know. By way of introductions, my name is Emily Jarvis, and I'm the event manager at GovLoop. So thank you all so much for being with us today. So let's get into it, because as you know, there are literally 5 generations active in today's workforce. So how can managers and supervisors consider all the differing perspectives, experience levels, communication norms, tech savvy on their team? There are a lot of factors. And how can individual contributors figure out how to work best with their colleagues? Well, the good news is that we have brought in an expert to provide an overview of what the government workforce looks like today and how to address generational differences to maximize productivity and improve team dynamics. It is a lot to get to in an hour, but before I turn it over to her, I do have a few housekeeping items to go over. First things first, we have some great resources available for you to download on the console, including this slide deck, so make sure you check that out. Of course, we hope you don't have any technical difficulties, but if you do, send us a message to that Ask a Question tab, and my colleague Jessica will get your questions answered. And here's the secret sauce, friends, because it's in that same portal where you can ask our experts questions. So don't be shy, put them in early and often. Or if you would rather, you can also engage with us in the open chat field. You can find that in the top left-hand corner. That's where you will find that piece of the puzzle. And of course, if you miss anything, don't worry. We're going to email you a link to the entire event tomorrow, which will be sent directly to your inbox. All right. Final piece of housekeeping. As you all know, we are giving out CPE credits, or continuing professional education credits, for your participation in today's session. Here's how you get those credits. First, stay in this session the entire time. Second, take all of the session polls. And 3, fill out that post-event a CPE, and we will send you your credit. All the polls will be shown in the slide window. Select your responses and click submit to send your answer. All right, with all of that housekeeping out of the way, let me introduce you to our expert. Joining us this morning is Lisa Hardman. Lisa is the Senior IT Analyst and an Adjunct faculty at the U.S. Government Accountability Office. Lisa, thanks so much for being with us today. And with that, I'm going to turn the reins over to you. We are in your good hands.
All right. Thank you so much, Emily, and good morning, NextGen. I'm so pleased to join you and talk about 5 generations in the workplace and what you need to know. As Emily mentioned, my name is Lisa Hardman. I am a Senior IT Analyst and Adjunct faculty at the U.S. Government Accountability Office. I am a certified DEIA facilitator and have been teaching to hundreds of your colleagues for the past 6 years. I've taught on many DEIA topics, and this one is of great interest to me, so I hope that it is of great interest to you. Welcome. I'm excited to talk to you about these 5 generations. And what I'm going to do is provide you some tips and tricks on what you need to know to bridge generational divides. Please don't hesitate to ask questions and participate. I am looking forward to dialoguing with you, addressing your concerns, and giving you some good information to work from. And we're going to keep this to about an hour to respect your time. But if we do go over, I hope it's because you're enjoying yourself so much that you want to continue to participate. So let's get started. Emily will be monitoring the chat. So let's get it. So we have 4 discussion objectives today. Number 1, we're going to understand the unique characteristics, preferences, and work styles of the different generations in the workforce. And what we want to do this for is to promote diversity appreciation. There are a wide variety of perspectives and ideas and experiences that we encounter in our workspace, and we want to talk through some of those today. We want to address the challenges in working in a hybrid workforce in particular by developing strategies for inclusivity and for collaborating amongst and between the generations. Thirdly, we want to harness the strengths that each of the generational cohorts bring to the table to foster not only mutual learning, mentorship, but a knowledge exchange. You have something to offer, they have something to offer, everyone has something to offer. And lastly, we want to foster a culture in the organization of empathy, flexibility, and empowerment, ensuring that everyone feels valued and respected, regardless of where they fall in the generations. So we have a little quick agenda. We're going to discuss these 4 objectives. I'm also going to provide you some takeaways. And the reason that I have those 4 verbs highlighted is because this is what I want to have as outcomes for you all. I want you to understand, I'd like for you to address, want you to harness, and want you to foster. And while you're more than welcome to enter questions into the chat and in the Q&A, we'll have some time. I'll try to save some time at the end for more direct questions once the presentation is finished. So without further ado, let's get started. So number 1, understanding the different generations. So when we talk about understanding, we're talking about how to listen to others and to translate what they're saying into something that is not just accurate, but something that is forthright and something that is clear. So when we engage with people and we're interacting in conversations, there's a difference between hearing and listening. When we listen, we hope to be active listeners so that we can get to understanding. We're going to talk about what generation you are and what we have represented in the class today. And we want to talk about a topic called situational awareness and how being situationally aware regarding microaggressions and unconscious bias can assist in being more understanding. So with that, let's take our first poll. Which generation do you represent? Please look at the explanations provided. Be careful with them because the years are not in sequence, and select the one that represent you. I happen to be Generation X. So to all my Gen Xers out there, you 70s and 80s babies, I don't want to say it's the best generation, but you know, right in the middle, we kind of hold everything together. Oh, Emily, are you not Gen X?
No, no. Fortunately, I don't know. I'm a millennial. I'm a 1987 girly. So
okay. So I'm not going to get into what year I was born. Let's just say it was before that. So please feel free to select. These are anonymous responses. No one is pointing at you or you or you. And this is just to get a temperature of the room to see who all we have in here.
I love what's going on in the chat right now, Lisa. There is some pride for folks and their generation. A lot of people are loving the Gen Xers, but us millennials, we gotta stay strong. We gotta stay strong.
I see you millennials. I see you X's. I see a boomer. Hi, boomer. Hi, Boomer. All right. Thanks, everybody. Jessica has advanced the poll, and wow, we have a strong millennial and Gen X contingent. I do want to call out my baby boomers and my Gen Zs that are in here. I am noticing that there are no silent generation representatives in the polling. Now, that is not a big deal, but we will talk about why I've chosen to include them in this segment. So, understanding generational interactions. There are 5 generations at work. We have the silent generation, we have baby boomers, we have Generation X, we have millennials, also known as Generation Y, and we have Gen Z. And yes, there are still some silent generation members that are in the workforce. I work with one. He is one of the most engaging, knowledgeable, wise gentlemen that I know. And you may encounter some silent generation folks in your workplaces or as stakeholders or in the different interactions that you have. They may be part or full time and can be a source of institutional knowledge and wisdom. A lot of the ones that I've talked to over the years, they just really like what they do. They're not ready to retire. They feel like they still have something to offer, so they stick around. And what's important to note as we talk about the generations is that each generation has specific characteristics associated, not defining, but associated with not only their communication preferences, but also their work styles. Another thing to think about as we talk about these generational interactions is that these differences can impact communication and collaboration. I'm sure that you all have had the opportunity to work in multi-generational teams, and there are preferences that go along with that. Again, these are generalized. You may very well find that endemic to your particular representation. All of these things may not apply. But for the purposes of this discussion, there are some easy generalities that we use that tend to associate with the majorities. Another thing I would like to bring up is that there are two things that you need to be aware of when you're speaking in these environments. Microaggressions and unconscious bias can be pervasive. And I'm going to get into that because I know that sounds accusatory, but it's not meant to be. And when I say that it's not meant to be accusatory, we will get into that as we move further into the topic. So this is a highly wordy slide. I'm going to go through this with you so that we can get to understanding these generational differences. So I'm going to start with the silent generation. These are the individuals that were born between 1928 and 1945. And these are your World War II people. These are the people that grew up during that time, were heavily impacted by World War II. And the associations with this particular generation is that they're cautious, they're thrifty, and they're conformist. If you look at the front end of that generation, you are coming up on the Great Depression. As some of the older ones went through the Great Depression, then they went into a time of war. During that war, there were rations, there were limits, everything was going toward the war effort. So a lot of the influences of that time led them to be more cautious because the world was dealing with some very serious issues. Thriftiness due to the rationing, and conformist. Next, we have baby boomers. Baby boomers were born between 1946 and 1964. They were the benefactors of post-war prosperity. And the associations that the boomers tend to have is that they have values like hard work. They tend to be very loyal to their employers, and they tend to have more traditional career paths. My parents were on the cusp of silent generation and baby boomers. Each of them worked and retired at the same place. And I can tell you that that is generally not the case for those generations after them. Generation X, which is the generation I represent, are those that are born between 1965 and 1980. So this is where you have the advent of the analog world moving to a digital world. Gen Xers experience rapid technological advancements and economic changes. And this generation is known for independence, adaptability, and work-life balance priorities. This is also the generation of the latchkey kid. I am one. I got my first house key when I was 9 years old. This was endemic to a lot of my cohort, and it fostered a lot of independence. Next, we have millennials, or Generation Y. And I see Emily putting it up. These people were born between 1981 and 1996. And this is where the digital age really becomes more pervasive. This is a time of iPads and cell phones, whereas my time was more centered around pagers and payphones. And the value comes in with flexibility, diversity, and more of a lean towards social causes. Millennials are often characterized as being more tech savvy, more team oriented, and the seeking of meaningful work. And now when I say seeking of meaningful work, it's not just about the paycheck. It's about the work and the meaning that goes on with the work. And finally, we have Generation Z. These are our digital natives, born between 1997 and 2012. And the priorities that Gen Zers tend to have are diversity, authenticity, and work-life integration. This is a little different from the Xers' work-life balance. Gen Z tends to want a kind of melding of their lives with their work. And it gets more into the more meaningful parts of what the millennials are talking about. And I see in the chat, someone says, teamwork makes the dream work. And that's one of my faves right there. Gen Z is known for their entrepreneurial spirit, which speaks to that desire for work-life integration and creative thinking. Now, as a matter of course, I wouldn't be a GAO auditor if I didn't share this. These age ranges come from the Pew Research Center. I promise I didn't make them up. These are not set in stone. There's a little bit of wiggle room in here. And some of you may be familiar with the concept of microgenerations. So there's a microgeneration that's been defined between baby boomers and Gen X. It's called Gen Jones. And then there's a microgeneration between Gen X and Gen Y, and those are Zennials. And if you are at the border of either of those and you kind of feel like, well, this doesn't quite cover me, you might be in one of the microgens. I will say that I am firmly in X. All of the things that they say about X is true for me. It's a pretty straightforward organization of how the different influences culturally and societally impact communication and work styles. Coming up in the next 8 to 10 years is Gen Alpha, or the AI native generation. And these would be those individuals born after 2012. They're not quite in the workplace, but they will be very soon. And they're characterized by their hyperconnectivity. These are the people that pretty much are tablet enhanced from very young. They are very much oriented towards digital spaces because they were born into it, and it is brought to them at much earlier ages. They are much more visually oriented for learning as well. I'm going to stop here for just a second to let you all kind of soak that in. I know that was a ton of information all at once, but I would love to see in the chat if there are those of you that felt like, well, that description doesn't fit me at all. I'm Gen X and I'm not even sort of interested in, independence or adaptability. I am someone that is very much in the analog space. These things are not all inclusive, but they are ways to organize and understand a particular group of people that grew up in a time with very particular influences and circumstances associated with them.
Definitely. So Lisa, we'll give folks here a second to make their mentions here in the chat. I will say anecdotally for me, I like to view myself as an elder millennial, but tech savvy is for sure part of my repertoire. And I don't know if it was grown up in the 90s when team sports were all things. We all got participation trophies. Just kidding. Just kidding. But I love a good team-oriented activity and things like that. So that makes sense. In the chat, folks are saying they felt a blend. Sarah's a proud millennial. Sarah, we are one and the same there. Beverly says, I'm a baby boomer, but felt more like Gen X. So she's a cusper. Gen X and Gen Z tendencies. Ooh, that is straddling some generations.
That is really interesting.
I love that.
I love that. That's awesome. So what I hope has happened here is that you've seen some things that you perhaps recognize, not just in yourself, but in others. And in interacting with them, perhaps there are some things that now you can understand, like, oh, that might explain something that didn't quite click to me. And what we hope to do today is give you, again, some ideas about how to interact and how they do. Denisha says, wow, I have 3 young adults, 2 in Y and 1 Z. Now I see why they're so different regarding work habits and expectations. Absolutely, Denisha, that is really what I'm getting at here. This is to equip you and to not only gain an understanding about yourself and some of the things that impact how you work and communicate, but how others do as well. So I brought up microaggressions and unconscious bias, and I just want to touch on them briefly. A microaggression is a form of unintended discrimination. They are brief, everyday exchanges that can send denigrating messages to certain individuals because of their group membership. When we talk about group membership in the context of generations, it is age. It is an unconscious choice of the user, but it has the same effect as conscious or intended discrimination. And this concept is rooted in the work of researchers Dr. Jack Dovidio from Yale and Dr. Samuel Gartner from the University of Delaware in their formation of a concept called aversive racism, where well-intentioned people consciously believe in and profess equality, but unconsciously act in a racist manner, particularly in ambiguous situations. Now, again, this is based in this format, but is applicable and can be seen in other group memberships where there are differences. So this can apply to difference in sex or gender. It can apply in age. It can apply in religious beliefs. It can apply all across the spectrum of the various diverse identities. And what we're going to talk about today is being proactive with good intention versus being reactive with good intention. And the reason that I have good intentions in quotes for being reactive is that when people are in situations where they're forced to respond to something instantly, they may not respond in the way that they should or in a way that is beneficial. They may do it in a way, well, I meant well. And we'll talk about that a little bit more coming up. So here are some examples of microaggressions. And these are targeted to this particular topic. There are hundreds and hundreds of them, but these are the ones we're going to talk about today. Comments about being technologically competent. I don't know that I need to get a whole lot into this, but I have had the experience of dealing with various individuals in various age groups, and there are some that would prefer to peck away at a typewriter, send you notes, handwritten, and would love nothing more than to meet with you in person, while I have others that would like to never be on camera with me, that would only like to discourse through Slack or through Teams, and are very comfortable picking up their phones and texting me. Now, what goes along with that is that there is an assumption of technological competence if someone is not desiring to utilize all of these means of communication or work. And that's sometimes not a fair assessment, particularly if it is based in what you believe to be someone's age range to be. Further, there are assumptions about work dedication, work-life balance. And I am just going to put this out here. Due to hybrid work environments that existed even before the pandemic, there is very definitely a contingent of people, and I'm not associating this with any particular generation, but they don't feel like if you're not in that office, butt in seat 5 days out of 5, then you're not really dedicated, or you are very much kind of just working just because. Conversely, there are those that see people that prefer that as a work style, and they're just like, all you do is work. What else is there to you? Is there anything else beside the work? And again, not a fair assessment. Number 3, and the reason that I have hedged a lot of my conversation about these are generalizations, so don't take them seriously. A microaggression can be that generalization about a specific group without the nuance of actually dealing with the individuals that you're dealing with. And what I hope you're hearing here is that making the generalization or the assumption without having the conversation is where the microaggression comes into play. And finally, reluctance to interact via a non-preferred communication channel. I get it. We are Zoom inundated. We are Teams inundated. There's always some pop-up, some phone call, some text. Some people really like these means of communication. Others would prefer to meet in person. Others would prefer to pick up the phone and talk to you. And associating that reluctance because it may not be your preferred communication style and reacting poorly to someone who enjoys that is an example of a microaggression. And I absolutely want to point out the asterisk at the bottom. It's usually not meant to be offensive. Most people would rather deal with someone whose intentions are good rather than someone who intentionally inflicts harm. And people will be quicker to forgive transgressions or work with you to resolve issues that arise if your original intentions are good. Fortunately, this class, this gathering, this discussion is going to equip you to have some things to use before you go into these interactions, and hopefully they can improve your relationships. Emily, I want to jump to a question that I see in here from Stephanie. Stephanie says, when did the concept of generations evolve? Did the silent generation call themselves the silent generation? There definitely are pros and cons to even calling themselves one of the generations. That is an excellent question, and I am going to get into that. You are foreshadowing some of what I'm talking about. The naming of the generations has been something that has occurred in the psychology realm, and it is a way to associate how groups interact and how they're influenced. Pew Research is a leading researcher about how different generations and how different groups of people respond to things. There are some very high level, hugely populated studies that track different groups over decades. And there are some commonalities that have come up based off of very specific defining events. And what has happened is that generational differences were something that really started to come along as a discussion point in about the 1960s. There were people trying to figure out why all of these societal changes were happening. What were these influences that were causing people to act differently? One of the things that fomented a lot of this is the switch, and I'm speaking of in the United States, is the change from an agrarian society to an industrial one. When you have people that were formerly interacting in more rural areas, were dealing with more small gatherings, villages, environments, and then you introduce mechanization, socializing changed. The access to information also changed, and how events impacted people changed because of the level of interaction that they were having. One of the things that was very key in the defining of the generations were the two world wars. There were very specific things that happened that impacted literally millions of people. It impacted their environment, it impacted where they lived, how they worked, how they earned money, how they were able to meet their basic needs. Moving from an agrarian society to an industrial society meant that you didn't need as many kids. The levels of socialization have changed quite a bit. And as far as the silent generation naming themselves that's not how the names came about. Psychologists came up with those names. It is easier to kind of get to, well, they call millennials because 2000, or they call baby boomers because it was a baby boom. But they call them the silent generation because of their stoicism. It was because they were kind of head down, get it done, very oriented towards accomplishment. So, Stephanie, I hope that answered your question. Was that helpful?
Well, it helped me.
All right, fantastic. And the next thing is I want to talk a little bit about what unconscious bias is. So unconscious bias refers to attitudes and stereotypes that impact our understanding, actions, and decisions in an unconscious manner. And okay, great. Thanks, Stephanie. These biases are often formed through socialization, through your experiences, and through your personal cultural influences. And the thing with unconscious bias is that it can impact how we perceive and interact with others. And what this can do is that it can create unintended discrimination or unfair treatment based on factors such as I mentioned before, race, gender, age, or background. And recognizing and addressing unconscious bias is crucial for creating inclusive and equitable environments. A few things that I want to point out about unconscious bias that are important to this and other conversations. This operates outside of our awareness. These are not things that we actively think about. They just reside in the back. That's why it's called unconscious. And what unconscious bias can do is that it can influence your interactions and behaviors in subtle and overt ways. Now, I hate to break it to you, and I'm going to hold your hand when I say this, is that it's universal. We all have biases. Yes, even you. Yes, me. Yes, Emily. Yes, the person sitting next to you. We all have them. Now, they are automatic, but they are malleable. And I need to make another point here. Some bias is good for you. It is a part of your self-awareness, and it is to keep you safe. If you see a dog with sharp teeth and your unconscious bias is that that dog looks scary and it has teeth, you should get away from it. It could be the friendliest dog that you've ever seen, but it could also have rabies and bite you. So when you think about these unconscious biases that you have, they operate outside of our awareness. And what the point of this conversation is to equip you to where you have more information to work from so that you can make these biases malleable. What do I mean by that? In the last bullet, it says that they're automatic, but the malleability of them comes about when you are informed, when you can say, I have more information to counteract the attitudes and stereotypes I have that I've developed through my experiences. I am crafting more experiences. Therefore, my interactions will be different. I am adding to the universe of my knowledge about people, places, things, environments, so that my biases are more malleable. All right, moving on to our second discussion, addressing challenges in the hybrid workplace. So now that we understand these communication differences, let's address some challenges. Employing that situational awareness that I was talking about can be helpful in acknowledging when these issues come up and how best to handle them. If you are in an environment where you know you, millennial, are going to be dealing with a Gen Z and a baby boomer, there are some communication things that you should know in general that may assist you in being a situationally aware person and being able to get to consensus. And employing the situational awareness can be helpful in acknowledging when issues come up and how you can best handle them. What we're going to talk about in this segment is work styles. Work styles can vary greatly between the generations, and this can cause some conflict. And we're going to talk about that in depth here. And what we want to come away with is an understanding that by embracing a variety of communication tools, not just your favorite, but a variety of tools, and adding some flexibility to your communication are key to making things work. And Stephanie, I'm going to address your comment in just a moment, but I'm going to move to our next slide because we have another poll. All righty. This is agnostic to your generational identity. What is your preferred means of communication at work out of these five? What is your preferred means of communication at work? I will tell you, I like email. And I know people hate it and it drives them crazy, but I really like email because I can dump everything out of my head. I can document what I need. I can edit it and be very clear, and then they have it.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Emily?
Oh boy. Now, you specifically wrote at work here. So I'm putting on just my at work hat, because my at home hat, you better be texting me. If my husband sends me an email, I'm like, sir, get out of here. Like, absolutely not. You know what? I think I'm a Zoom, Teams, and WebEx girl. That might be controversial, but we work remote here at GovLoop, so face-to-face doesn't happen all that often. But I like to see people's faces. So I'm gonna do the video call thing.
Gotcha.
All
So
right.
Dakota says email is best because there's a paper trail. It makes it
That's
easier
true.
to remember what you said to who. Totally agree, because I'm going to tell you, as a Gen Xer, my memory is not what it used to be. So having that record is really helpful. Michelle says Slack 100% for me. Olade said, I wish we could pick more than one. No, you have to pick one. You have your preferred one, not the ones you just like to use, but your preferred.
Yep.
And Beverly says it depends on the situation and the person. And that's fair. And Lily Ann says, if I need a record, email, otherwise Teams all day. And so we have a pretty interesting divide here. I have a quarter of you that say you prefer face-to-face. In my pre-hybrid life before the pandemic, face-to-face was my preferred as well. And the reason that face-to-face, I think, it is or was a selection of a full quarter of you is that the means of communication and understanding is a lot more complete in person. I like to give the statistic that 80% of communication is nonverbal. 80% of communication is nonverbal. So as you are listening to me talk, if you closed your eyes, you may have any vision in your head about what I look like, how engaged I am, what I have on, how my hands are moving. I'm a person that talks with her hands. So I'm that really helps me out a bit. Sometimes I have to close my hands because then I get into the windmilling and, that gets distracting. But face-to-face communication has the benefit of being a whole communication. About 10% of you said phone calls. Nobody likes to talk on the phone. I get it. But, I like a phone call. Email, 40% of you said email. And I think that some of the respondents touched on that. It's nice to have a record. It is nice to have a record. Do not rely on my memory. I have 1,000 notes on my desk for that reason. A full 17% said texting or Slack, and about 8.5% of you said Zoom, Teams, and WebEx. I will admit myself to having Zoom fatigue. I am probably on Zoom at least 20 hours a week, and I could just not. I would rather and obviously some meetings can be emails, but I am a little bit on Zoom overload, just a little. Oh. Okay. And Nathaniel said he prefers person to person personally, even though I'm a millennial. And that's a good point, Nathaniel. Again, these are generalizations, but as I have talked to millennials, as I've talked to Gen Xers, as I've talked to baby boomers and others, they largely either, if it's not completely applicable to them, they can see it in others in their generation. So this was awesome, but 40% of you all say email. That is cool. So next slide, we're going to talk about understanding those generational interactions. So as you can see, as you move through the different generations, there are some variations in their preferred communication styles. Silent generation likes face-to-face one-on-ones. They want to talk to you. They like handwritten notes. It's very personal. It's very direct. And they're more likely to use formal language. Baby boomers prefer face-to-face meetings as well. They also really like a phone call. And the emails are formalized. Now, I want to stop here and focus on something that I've had other people tell me about. I know sometimes the emails that are very formal come across as very stunted and impersonal and can feel very attack-ish, or they can feel very ordered. It is not necessarily that these are negative things. It is just the formality of them. But there is a very clear divide about formalities of emails and generational differences. We have seen it over and over and over again. Again, this is not universal, but it's pretty close. Generation X, yes, we like our email. We like phone calls. We occasionally will meet face-to-face, but what I have found endemic of my particular generation is that the texting is not our preferred means. I am not a big texter unless forced. I have a millennial niece who absolutely loves it, and she wants to get on a video call with me and instant message me to death. And I'm like, will you please just call me? This is doing a lot for me. So as I move to the millennials, yes, the instant messaging, emails, and video calls. And again, if you think back to the slides about the different generational influences, this makes a lot of sense. When you talk about the technological improvements and how early adopting it becomes, this makes a lot of sense. And then Gen Z, instant message, social media, and video calls. Gen Z is much more invested in social media than the other generations. Not to say that millennials and Gen X and boomers and silent do not use it. Gen Z's acquisition of information is much more primarily derived from media. So the communication style in interacting with that media and that information is more pervasive in that place. And Michelle says, I'm a millennial and I don't answer phone calls I'm not expecting. I hear this a lot. There's this desire to prep for phone calls. And I get it. It can be intrusive if you're not expecting it. And also in a space where in particular communication environments, you want to be prepared. I can understand how that is important to you. Sandra says, I love texting, but spell check can really convey something different. Yes. There was a run for a while in some of the social media areas of, autocorrect failures. And some of them are hysterical. And you're like, what were you typing to even come up with that? And it's one of the reasons I'm not a huge texter, because by the time I've corrected everything and Samsung or Apple has decided that I meant one thing and I really typed something else, it's like, forget it. I could have just called you and told you. And let's see. Oh, there's some polling information. She says, Beverly says my millennials don't read emails. Oh, I'm sorry, Beverly, because they would hate me because I love an email because it's a trail. But yeah. Melissa said, and Melissa touched on something. I know that there was something in the chat earlier and I missed it in the scroll. And whoever put it, I apologize because I couldn't get to it fast enough. Yes, for hearing disabled or for closed captioning, yes, absolutely. The texting and the other means through which the communication is facilitated. Zoom does have very good closed captioning. So when we talk about being inclusive with conversation, those are some things that we do need to keep in mind as we facilitate environments where people are comfortable communicating. So I thank you all for this really engaging chat. This is cool. Dakota also says, I've gotten roughly 8 million phone calls from political surveyors in the last month. So yeah, I don't answer phone calls either. I have spam on my phone for that reason. But the people that I do want to talk to, I do want to talk to. So move on. So as you can see from those differences, those can bring about some challenges. And this slide, at this point, we're going to talk about addressing those challenges in the hybrid workforce. So as you can imagine, with those different means of communication, there are work styles that may be different between the different generations. For the silent generation, methodical and conventional. This is a group that works within the system. And this is really understandable based on, again, the societal influences of the time. A world war and a time between the Great Depression and the World War, the system was in place to try to get things back to a norm. And direct communication is a hallmark of this group. Baby boomers are very traditional, very structured work hours. These are your original 9-to-5ers. Come in at 9, take their lunch, leave at 5. They left work at work because they didn't have laptops. I don't know if that's not necessarily a thing that I wish we had advanced to, but they definitely were. Work was work. And when you think about that in the ways that they think about traditional work and being very focused, that's because work was work. There wasn't this kind of overlap with home life because you left those papers and those folders for the most part at the office. Boomers may be less tech savvy, but are willing to learn. Maybe less tech savvy, but are willing to learn. Generation X is your generation where you start to get into this work-life balance. And some of that has to do with that we have the technology to bring some of this work home. We're working longer hours because the traditional structures are different, partially due to the advents of technology. I know I am an Xer that when we went on remote work for the pandemic, I was losing it. I was definitely a 3-day-a-week person in the office. I liked it. I liked the division. I am home now most of the time, and I find myself longing to go into the office because I want the break. It is very easy to get consumed. And part of having that work-life balance was the break to go to the office and be at the office and come home and just be home. And being technologically comfortable, I think that that term is really important because when you think about how Gen X got into the computer world and got into computer science and got into personal computers and being able to do that kind of work, whereas now people are more laptop-oriented, tablet-oriented, phone-oriented. We were really the big wave of transition. For millennials, there's a value in work-life integration and job satisfaction. There's a higher value on remote work options because of how they interact with others. And millennials are just more tech savvy. They have had the exposure in college. They've had the exposure at the lower levels. They're the ones that were more likely to grow up with a computer in the house from a very early age. And then we have Gen Z. They're very much into the extremes of flexible work hours. Like, I want to work when it's comfortable for me. I may not be a morning person. And if I can get my work done from 1 to 9 p.m., why does it matter as opposed to having it from 8 to 5? And they have a much stronger preference for remote work because they've been exposed to it. Generally, Gen Zers were coming up at a time where if they got their first jobs, it was remote because we were in the middle of the pandemic. That's what they know, and that's what the comfort level is. And they tend to be more highly technically proficient just because of the exposure. I will tell you, as a Gen Xer, my first encounter with a computer was learning to play Oregon Trail. It was a green screen, and I died of dysentery every time. I don't know why, but I did. And my first actual computer class was in high school, and I learned to program in BASIC. And some of you may not even know what that is, but it's a very early computer language. When I first went to college, it was Fortran and COBOL, neither of which I don't think you can get those as classes now. And Emily says she always died crossing the rivers. I did it, but I always died of dysentery. And Danita makes an excellent point. Gen X had to learn a whole lot in a very little time. Yeah. I will tell you all that when I started college, I did not have email or internet access. It's not that long ago. And it is really amazing to see how digital curation has changed so much. I have a friend who has already secured emails and accounts for her very small children so she can have dominion over their names. So these are the things that we come across in the work environments. I feel that having an acknowledgement of these things can only improve your understanding of some of the people that you work with and some of the things that may be endemic to you, but you're not always actively thinking about. So I talked a bit about employing situational awareness. Now that you have this information regarding these different generations and how they work and what their preferences can be, let's talk a little bit about what the situational awareness is. It's defined as the ability to perceive, understand, and respond effectively to the environment around you. So this means not jumping into the middle of a space and immediately interacting. Perception, understanding, and response require stopping and listening. Situational awareness is specific to a time and a place. Every place is not going to have the same situational awareness, and every time period is not either. Different places are going to have a level of situational awareness at different times. It is also particular to the person and the specific environment. If I am at a business lunch at the Cheesecake Factory, that is a very different level of situational awareness than if I'm out with my friends after work at the Cheesecake Factory. And what this comes down to is employing the situational awareness for particular outcomes and particular follow-up. And what this means is that as you employ whatever awareness you have about a particular situation, that you are helping to set the tone. Talked a little bit earlier about how important it is to communicate well and communicate effectively, being an active listener. And engaging with people in any particular situation means that in order to facilitate understanding, to perceive what someone is talking about, and to respond effectively, having the proper tone set is important. Emily says, real talk, can we all just go to the Cheesecake Factory now? I'm hungry. Oh my goodness, you tickled me. In addition, situational awareness involves being aware of what's happening in your surroundings, interpreting this information accurately and fairly, and anticipating potential issues or opportunities. In a workplace context, situational awareness is crucial for you to make informed decisions. And that's what I want one of these takeaways to be. If you can effectively navigate a situation by being an aware person, you will make better decisions. You will maintain a safe space, and you will ensure effective communication and collaboration. So, final poll, everybody. How often do you consciously practice situational awareness in the workplace? This is a no judgment zone. Let's talk about it. I am going to tell you, even as a practitioner, I cannot click always. I cannot click always. And I am a practitioner. I have studied this, and I cannot click always. So if you are someone that can click always, my hat is off to you. I, bow to your greatness. But this is an anonymous poll. Just be honest. How often do you consciously practice situational awareness in the workplace?
I wish I could answer. I'm going to make myself not anonymous. I wish I could say I was either A or B, but I gotta be honest, I'm probably like C or D. I'm always doing like 2 or 3 things at the same time, which isn't good. I know that. We're working on it. But that definitely has an impact for sure.
I want to address Sandra. She said, please repeat the definition of situational awareness. Absolutely. It is the ability to perceive, understand, and respond effectively to the environment around you. And Lily says, being generationally aware also helps to interpret what's happening in the situation. Absolutely. Oh, Lily, you're teaching this class for me. This is awesome. I must be getting through. It is very, very, very important to bring these things together in order to make better decisions. And we've advanced it. 52% of you said often. That is more than I could have hoped for. Going into an environment and taking a beat and saying, okay, this is what's going on, is helpful. It brings about better communication. It helps people to work together better, and it really facilitates you having those good, productive conversations that lead to positive outcomes. For the 8% of you that said always, again, my hat is off to you. I am so happy that you all make it a part of your work environment and your work life. I imagine that you all are excellent facilitators in what you do, excellent moderators, excellent mitigators. You're probably our stronger leaders and mentors, and that's greatly appreciated. The 38% of you that says sometimes, I appreciate that. Every situation is not one that you can be like personally or actively situationally aware in, depending on what the environment is. And that's something else I do want to talk about. Situational awareness is a lot easier in familiar environments. I'll say that again. Situational awareness is easier in familiar environments. Now, if you are in an unfamiliar environment, it's all the more important to take a gauge, take a peek, take a breather, take a beat and see what's going on. And Jessica asked, do people who say always have anxiety? I have an answer for you. I'm going to say no, but I get it because I have some anxiety and I can't do it always. I think about it after the fact, but no, and Jessica, that's a very fair statement. That's people who say always have anxiety, like, oh my God, what's going on? Yes, I totally get that. For those of you that said never, I invite you to think about why that is. I invite you to think about how thinking through the environment that you're in and just taking a moment to get in can possibly lead to improved outcomes for you. That can lead to improved decision making, that can improve the projects that you work on, the decisions you have to make, moving forward in your teams and in the work that you do. So thank you everyone for participating in that poll. So we are to our third one, harnessing strengths in the hybrid workforce. Now, what do I mean when I say that? We have addressed some of the challenges that have come up in the differing ways that the different generations may work and how they prefer to communicate. Let's talk about how to harness those strengths. Just as anything else, the differences that exist among us give us opportunities to harness strengths. There are strengths that are endemic to everyone, and there are ways to harness strengths that may not be your particular strengths. One of those ways is having effective communication strategies because they can help to alleviate conflict. Much of conflict can be tied to two things. People are not listening, and people are talking past each other. Another way to do this is through mutual learning and mentorship. It is an awesome thing to get someone from a generation ahead of you and someone from a generation behind you to have some mutual learning and some co-mentorship going on. And in leadership environments, we want to be able to create opportunity for knowledge exchanges. Everyone has something to offer. And I know for some of us in our more technical spaces, this can be complicated, but I promise you, somebody has something to offer for you, whether they have been in the environment for 6 months or for 40 years. Olada had a question. She said, I can speak for my statement. I can speak for myself. I do. I'm also an overthinker and generally extra sensitive to everything. Could be a coping mechanism. Because of these things, I am hyper aware in all social situations, which can be draining and leads me to avoid being around people too often. I would like to touch on that for just a moment. Hyper awareness is often a way for us to pre-diffuse difficult situations. In letting some of this go and deciding to be an observer or a more passive participant can help to reduce some of that hyper awareness. As someone who is, again, in this practitioner space, some of the situational awareness that we end up deploying is, in fact, to pre-diffuse situations. If you know that you have certain personalities that clash, if you know that there is a topic that's going to come up that is contentious, that hyper-awareness can be used to kind of pre-diffuse a situation. And what I'm hoping to explain here is that there are other ways to kind of lessen that load on you and give some of that burden to others. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through this. As we talk about mutual learning and mentorship, there are some things that we can do or we can encourage that help people to get away from taking on that burden. And so, oh gosh, I'm so sorry that the slide is coming up this way, but I'm going to offer you 6 strategies for effective communication. And what I'm hoping to do is give you some tools that can be helpful as you are engaging in these spaces and dealing with different people in different generational areas. Number 1, embrace a multi-channel approach. We don't always have to interact through Zoom. We don't always have to talk on the phone. We don't always have to have the in-person meetings unless we have to have the in-person meetings. But using a variety of communication channels can be helpful in multi-generational teams. it helps to accommodate different preferences, and people can be more comfortable knowing that, okay, we have this Zoom this week, but in another couple weeks, we are going to have my preferred communication style. It is an accommodation that allows for better facilitation. Number 2, promote flexibility and understanding. Everyone isn't going to be the same, and acknowledging the differences can be the first step in really engendering better conversations about it. Let's leverage technology wisely. Some vehicles are better for certain communications than others. As we do that, we need to think through, what are the best ways to communicate the information I want to get across? Also, you want to foster inclusivity and that open communication. If someone is really better getting their thoughts down through email, by all means, facilitate that. Let them communicate that way. Providing clear guidelines and expectations is also helpful. The more clear you are about expectations, the more clear you are about what you expect from folks, they're better able to inculcate that and communicate in ways that are beneficial to everyone. And finally, I want to encourage intergenerational mentoring, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. And so as we think about this hybrid workforce, and as we go through, and I promise I'm going to keep this quick, this intergenerational mentoring can be very helpful. And it's not just getting someone that has more of experience than you do. It's getting into leveraging the unique strengths of everyone and creating opportunities for collaboration. What do I mean by that? It is better in general to have a multitude of influences and thoughts and conversations with differing people, because it makes for a more balanced evaluation of what you're trying to get to. The more people that you consider, the more ideas that you entertain, you can streamline and make it accessible for more people. And how do we do that? You can facilitate regular team building activities. You can promote a culture of continuous learning and adaptation, such as taking these sorts of seminars and classes. And what I've just done, highlight the benefits of diverse perspectives. Having one voice in the room that is supposed to be the overarching voice for everyone is limiting. And as we have seen in various environments, only having that one voice is exclusionary and does not make for the best decisions for the whole. All right. And lastly, we're going to talk about fostering a flexible, empathetic, empowered culture. And you don't have to be a manager to do that. But what you can do is that you can ask critical questions. You can cultivate flexibility, respect, and empathy. And that helps to improve the environment that you're in. And that helps you with getting to a place of situational awareness. So how do we do that? It starts with me asking those critical questions. And to ask critical questions is to gather responses and deliver thoughtful and complete answers. Asking critical questions can help uncover underlying issues, identify areas for improvement, and foster continuous learning and adaptability. And what I want you to take away from this is that when you ask, you're not assuming. You are looking for information, not ammunition. 4 things I want you to take away from this. What is your intent? What is your impact? What is your response? And what is your action? When you ask critical questions, if you go into it with some idea of how this is going to have an outcome that's useful, your critical questions will yield benefits and results. Being a culture cultivator. By asking critical questions, you can encourage deeper reflection and dialogue, leads to more effective strategies, and makes for a better experience in the hybrid workforce. So here we are, takeaways. I did not mean to go over, but some of this conversation on the side was incredible. I want you to remember that different generations bring diverse perspectives, and that fosters creativity. Understanding how effective communication, levels of expertise, and work-life balance are associated is crucial for bridging those gaps. By aligning your organizational goals with those identified strengths, it makes you more agile and competitive. And finally, Having a culture of empathy and inclusivity empowers everyone, and it fosters collaboration. I want to have you ask questions and comments, but we are out of time. I thank you all so much for your attention. Thanks, Emily. Thanks, Jessica. Thank you, GovLoop and NextGen. My email is on the slide. Thank you, everyone. Please feel free to reach out to me. I promise to respond. Thank you.
No, Lisa, thank you, because this is a hard conversation to have. We all have certain thoughts and opinions on the different generations and how we all work together. So for you to break it down for us in this way that makes such logical sense and gives us some really actionable tips to take into our day-to-day, I really appreciate it. And it looks like our attendees did too. Abby said this was fantastic and that you're totally awesome. And I agree. You are totally awesome. Even if you're a Gen X and I'm a millennial, we can still be friends. We can still be friends.
Absolutely. Thank you again, everyone.
Yeah. For our attendees, here's the deal. We are going to start the keynotes in about 10 minutes in the conference hall. So you got a little bit of time to run to the exhibit hall, visit the conference center, go to the bathroom. I don't know what you got to do. You do you. And I will see you, of course, over in the conference hall in about 10 minutes. Don't forget, though, please take your feedback survey if you're looking to get that CPE credit. And we'll figure out the polls. If you missed one, don't worry about it. We'll figure it out on the back end, of course. But let's all give Lisa one more round of applause. Lisa, you were the absolute best. You brought so much energy to the conversation, so thank you so much. And I will see you all in a few minutes over in the keynotes. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.